O mundo nunca falou tanto em consumo consciente como agora. Ele deixou de ser uma opção para se transformar em uma necessidade. De agora para frente, vamos precisar ser ainda mais gentis com a natureza. Isso significa descobrir em quais condições trabalhistas aquele produto foi feito, conhecer bem a origem das matérias-primas e ter uma cadeia de consumo mais limpa e eficiente, gerando menos resíduos e menos lixo. É assim que o Kind Letter acredita e atua. Consumo consciente é um gesto de gentileza. Mas essa preocupação do Kind Letter não é de hoje. O mundo mudou. Por isso, precisamos cultivar hábitos cada vez mais conscientes. Acesse kindletter.com e veja como nosso processo de produção é pensado todos os dias nesse novo mundo.
The story of this family business begins on May 8th, 1821. In the late 60s, the family decides to focus on fats and tanning substances for the leather industry, an important step that still determines the course of the company. Nowadays, Smit Zoon is the largest family business in the leather sector, with sustainability and the pursuit of quality high on the agenda, their products sold in over 60 countries. Through innovation and collaboration and a strong emphasis on sustainable entrepreneurship, it is Smit Zoon's mission to create a sustainable leather value chain. As one of the top 5 players in the leather industry, Smit Zoon challenges all stakeholders in the leather value chain to become more sustainable. Because every drop makes a difference.
Olá, bem-vindos.
Good morning and welcome. We're starting the second day of the CSCB Sustainability Forum. Thank you for coming by. We started that journey yesterday to learn more about trends, and we'll have 3 very relevant presentations for our industry today. This is the first 100% digital forum. It's online and in real time. It's organized by Brazilian Leather, the Tanning Industry Center, CICB, and the Brazilian Agency to Promote Exports and Investments, Apex-Brasil, to promote domestic leather abroad. Our main topic in these 2 days is connecting brands and people, showing the importance of shared value to our society. Our sponsors are Gold sponsors, JBS Coros and Smit Zoon. And silver sponsors are Euro America and Units Brazil. We would like to thank the members of CICB that are joining us today, the members of the Sustainability Certification Program for Brazilian Leather, CSCB, and the companies that make part of the Brazilian leather effort. Just like yesterday, we'll be broadcasting this event in English and Portuguese. For those of you who do not understand English, you have to switch the language, click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom platform. Questions must submit it to contato@cicb.org.br. Questions will be forwarded to speakers. We'll be giving out 2 leather backpacks. If you want to be part of that raffle, you have to make a donation to one of the charity institutions we indicate in the forum. Use the QR code, make your donation, and submit a receipt to our team by noon today. There will be 3 presentations today. Cristofer Burkhard, commercial technician of Smit Zoon. He'll be talking about zeology, a step toward environmental and socially responsible leather. Cristofer has worked in this industry for over 20 years. He's in charge of the Americas market for Smit Zoon. It's a pleasure to have you, Cristofer. You may have the floor now, sir. Before I share my screen, I would like to say good morning to all of you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to send this positive message to our industry. As Rogério said, I've been in this industry for over 20 years. My family works in this industry. I am honored to show you new technology with the support of the company I work for. It's a pleasure to talk to such a distinguished audience. Yesterday, I heard a very interesting term. We are conscious leaders. I am certain I'm talking to several conscious leaders today. These are the people that will actually make a difference in our industry and transform the entire leather value chain, and it will become more sustainable. Therefore, I would like to thank the CICB team for all the support you have given me. Let's get started then. Everything is new to us in this new normal, right? But at the same time, we're learning how to operate a virtual platform. I have realized that people are interacting more often, sharing more information in real time. It's very positive. We're conducting this forum online. We're all safer, protecting ourselves from COVID-19. And of course, we have to take this opportunity to reach out, to expand that conversation with people all over the world, trying to strike a positive balance with the environment and change our future to ensure the future of future generations so that they can enjoy nature just like we're doing ourselves. The focus is zeology today, a step toward social and environmentally sustainable leather. Let me give you some context of the world today. I got this data from a documentary, a 93-year-old Britishman, David Attenborough. He dedicated his life to film nature. He's been to places no one else has ever been before, and he did this documentary as a warning to us, to all of us. That is the data I got from that documentary. It shows the impact of human development on our planet. Starting in 1937, we had 2.3 billion people back then. Carbon in atmosphere was 280 ppm, and wilderness accounted for 66% of the entire territory of the planet. 50 years later, there were 4.3 billion people. Carbon went up to 335 parts per million, and the remaining wilderness came down to 55%. Today, 2020, we're almost 8 billion people on the planet. 415 ppm, and only 35% of remaining wilderness on the face of the earth. We can see some impact. That's why we're all concerned about global warming. In 2100, there should be between 11 and 12 billion people on Earth. And I would like to ask you that question. How much carbon we'll have in the atmosphere? How many remaining wilderness? That will depend on our generation, how we are going to behave and use natural resources. And in the end, what impact our development will have on our future. The year 2100 is just around the corner. Some of us may not make it, but our grandchildren, our children and grandchildren will be there. What world would we like to leave them? It's up to us to do something to change that game, because the road ahead of us, the path we're trailing, is not very pleasant. The results are not very pleasant. So this is something that we have to take into account. That's the reality we're faced with. And then I'll be more specific about the tanning industry and how we can contribute to change that game. Let me talk about Smit Zoon. Who are we? It's a Dutch family-owned company founded in 1821. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 200th anniversary. The 7th generation of that family is running the business now. Smit Zoon. Smit is a family name, and Zoon means son in Dutch. That is connected to the tradition of the company. It's a family-owned, preparing the company and the planet for future generations. Smit Zoon specializes in leather solutions. That's the sole purpose of the company, to produce chemicals for the leather industry. Headquarters are in the Netherlands, but we have global operations. We have offices in China, Germany, Italy, and India. And we operate in over 67 countries by means of agents and accredited distributors. We have an application lab in Novo Hamburgo in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, and our accredited partner is Química Carioca, located in the city of Franca in the state of São Paulo. We improve things on a daily basis to have a 100% social, environmentally sustainable. We have an R&D department completely focused on these principles, following that identity of the company and its mission, which is to change the leather value chain into a more sustainable chain. We cannot pull it off on our own. We have to involve our partners to improve or to implement these improvements, and then reach our goal, which is to produce sustainable leather, good for people. These are the brands we have in the market. In the Brazilian market, Smit is the most famous brand, focusing on re-tanning products, greases, tannin, and Cody Eco, an Italian company purchased in 2017, more related to the world of fashion, specialized in finishing products, and Nera. It's a new brand. It's now being introduced with the Zeology concept. It means a new era, Nera. This is the latest brand we have used. It's more focused in the tanning process per se. As I said before, we want to positively influence the leather chain. We want to make that chain into a more sustainable one. Our goal for 2025, and we will require the support of conscious leaders in the marketplace. Here are a few examples of initiatives we are involved with. Leather Naturally, very well known by many people. They've been promoting our material as beautiful and natural, promoting to younger generations so they can understand that leather is indeed sustainable. It's beautiful, it's durable, and it's the right choice to make. Smit Zoon is part of the leather, and we are also in the Ecovadis. We had the top level, level 3 at ZDHC. We promote the safe use of chemicals, promoting the proper use of protective equipment, the right packaging, safety information on the label, everything related to safety in using chemicals. A few years back, we developed a product passport, a booklet per se, with the description of products that were analyzed individually, both on the performance on the leather as well as their environmental impact. Once again, we are promoting sustainability, being transparent, and bringing technological innovation. Through innovation, we want to reduce our carbon footprint. That's the future we don't want. We want to reduce carbon emissions. We have 3 platforms: the biological phase chemistry. We introduced the product line using raw materials from renewable sources. That's the Biopol and Biotin lines. Emissions. We also developed a line of tanning agents, phenol-free, chromium-free. These are high-performance products with very low emissions and consumption. Products that are dedicated and optimized processes, providing constant technical training programs, exchanging information throughout the world, always aiming at optimizing processes, improve water use, energy use, or product use. With the goal, in the end, to include more and more technology to improve sustainability. And now, on to the main topic, zeology. What is zeology, after all? It's a new tanning concept. It's developed and patented by the Smit Zoon group. That's the Nera brand. It's a combination. It's a word coined by Smit, zeolite and technology. Zeolite is a chemical component and technology. It's a new tanning concept, which is more sustainable. That's what the Smit Group is bringing to the market. These are the four pillars that describe the system. The process itself, it's a plug-and-play process. Which means it can be easily adapted to the machines, to the current structure that the leather industry uses today. Adapting to this new tanning concept is simple after all. Of course, there are a few process recommendations to make sure that the tanning process is complete. Actually, I had the chance to work in that process. It's a very simple process indeed. It's a solid tanning process. It can be repeated, and you can optimize that re-tanning process. You will no longer need other products. So the re-tanning process is wholesome. Performance, constant high-quality leather, very white colors, and very intense colors at the same time. It's light and heat resistance. There will be less contamination in wastewater, better proportion of sulfates. You don't need sulfuric acid, and you don't use other sulfatic salts. And the residue are chromium-free, and it can be easily reused. I'll be talking about biodegradability, and you better understand what I mean. Safety and health, it's chromium, aldehydes, and heavy metal free. There are no risks of toxic substances, just as chromium-6, and adapts to trends, rules, and regulations of the market today. This is zeolite. It can be found in nature, and it can be synthesized. In nature, it can be found in volcanic regions. The picture on your right, these are stones that I collected myself in that volcano in Ecuador on the left. Zeolite comes in different colors, depending on the elements, the impurities available in the environment. On the top, another picture can be found in white. On the bottom left corner, that's zeology. That is synthesized by Smit. And at the bottom, in the middle, that's the chemical structural representation. It's a crystal structure, it's a mineral. It has the three most abundant elements: oxygen, silicon, and hydrogen. It's connected in a crystal structure. They are not freed separately. This is what's going to happen in the process, and I'll further explain that. It's free of chromium, aldehydes, heavy metals, safe for leather production, safe for consumers. It's non-toxic, and it's not hazardous. And it's important to say that it's more present in our lives than we think. It's used in toothpaste, detergent, detox pills. You can purchase a pill, a zeolite pill in a drugstore as a detox pill. Of course, you have to follow your doctor's orders. But again, it's a safe product for human beings and for nature. And it's also used in water filters for human consumption. How does it work? These are the top 3 tanning processes. We know that there are other, but these are the metallic salts, vegetal, and synthetic. I'm not talking about the chemistry of these methods. Everyone is very familiar with it. And a new chemistry comes into play. It's a more sustainable solution to our industry. Zeology is based on silicate aluminum, found in nature and synthesized, as I said, and it will interact with collagen, will be able to stabilize protein, therefore. This is the representation of processes in the beam house. As I said, there won't be major differences, things that we are already familiar with. There are some recommendations, especially in the liming. The liming operator must be very well taken care of so that you can have a proper sludge. So the molecule is large and it needs room to penetrate down the cut and to go deep down where we want it to be, through the fibers, so that it can optimally conclude the tanning process. So the liming has to be very well taken care of. And de-liming has to be appropriate as well, using soluble, because zeolite will react to calcium. If calcium is present in leather, the product may not spread as completely, as uniformly as we would like it to be. It can open up the fibers, just like we have been doing for so many years. The tanning agent per se receives treatment with organic acid, preparing zeolite for the tanning procedure per se. You remove all the calcium, use formic acid or sulfuric acid, citric acid, sometimes can be present in some formulations. 2.8 is the pH. Once the curing takes place, you add zeolite. It's a crystal bundled, and in that process, it will be dispersed into smaller structures that will then penetrate the hide per se. And once again, when you add that into the water, it's dispersion. It's not solving or dissolving anything. The entire zeolite molecule will get into the collagen and will then react and promote fiber stabilization. That's the diffusion within the structure. On the right, you see a picture with some hides tanned with the product. Once zeolite penetrates the structure, collagen is protonated. It's protected. There won't be an immediate reaction, but there will be some sort of interaction. And you can detect a rise in temperature, and then only when activation takes place, you conclude that stabilization process. That activation, in a nutshell, is to increase pH from 0.4 to 4.6, 4.8, which is an ideal pH, and you deplete zeolite almost completely, and then you produce leather with temperatures at 70, 75 degrees. And then it can be broken down, lowered, and then it can be shifted to the next procedures. Once you have the tanned leather, you have the Zeo white. That's the name we came up with. It's not wet blue, it's not neo white, it's Zeo white. Unlike anything else we have in the market. Again, this is a representation of the molecule interaction, zeolite and collagen molecules. It's van der Waals forces come into play. And what are the outlook? What is the outlook for Zeo white leather? The green bars indicate the conclusions we have seen in Europe using Zeo white leather. Chrome and GDA. Let me explain. When the green bar is halfway through, it means it's the same result. When it's greater, it means it has a superior result. When it's smaller, inferior results. In terms of physical aspects, in Zeo white leather, you have tightness, fullness are very positive. It's not as soft and it's not as elastic. However, we have seen that by picking the greasing agents properly, you can adjust that softness. And another is tear strength and tensile strength. It's better than those that were tanned with GDA and chromium. The appearance is very positive, very white leather, and very bright colors. Very thin floor, smaller bellies. It has to do with firmness and less wrinkles. In terms of fastness, finishing adhesion, it's somewhat smaller than those of other products. It's something that can be adjusted by picking the right resins and adherent products. At the same time, the two-dimensional shrinkage, which is very important to the auto industry, to produce steering wheels and dashboards, better results from those that were tanned with GDA. There was some improvement in terms of smell, emission, and burning behavior. Smell and emissions have to do with the capacity that leather has depleting products that would come in processes downstream. So they will deplete these components that will come up in later analyses. I'll be talking about biodegradability. It's a test conducted with tanned leather, with untanned collagen, Z white, GDA, and chromium tanned leather. Untanned or not tanned collagen has some durability issues. It's an ISO method using material under certain circumstances with microorganisms. This is what we see in water in the tanneries. Zeology, that's the green line. The results are very interesting. There was 75% degradation in 20 days. And in blue and red, GA and chromium, 22% degradation, and chromium about 4%. The blue line, up to the first 300 hours, there was no degradation. Glutaraldehyde is toxic to microorganisms. Before it is depleted, microorganisms could not degrade collagen. Z-white flows are not toxic to microorganisms, which is very important. The baths follow the traditional procedures. Residues are the scrap, the sludge, the slurry. You only have natural. There won't be any heavy metals. It's white, just like you can see in the picture, and they can be easily handled. The sludge flow can be treated so that it can be biodegradable, and the residue studies can be reused, recycled, or biodegraded in a potentially circular fashion, just like bionutrients, just like fertilizers. These are studies currently underway, but the non-toxicity of the material gives us a lot of hope. Let me just give you some more information. It's been cradle to cradle certified. That's the continuum grade. Cradle to cradle certifies materials taking into account these 11 aspects. It has to do with the health of these products. It literally means cradle to cradle. They have offices in California, and it's based on a book written by an American architect and a German chemist. They use the circular logic, the circular use of elements in nature. The next step we're working on is to conduct a life cycle analysis. We are going to associate that with the cradle-to-cradle analysis. We expect to conclude that study next year. It's very complex, very costly. It takes into account raw materials, production, packaging, distribution, use, waste, following the logic of the circular economy. This can be an argument, a strong argument, to even today, to convince consumers and brands to pick the right material. And I would like to conclude by asking a question. What do we want from the future? Or what do we expect from the future? And how can we make sure it exists? Our generation is presented with a great opportunity. We can be remembered for centuries. We are the generation that finally realized the impact we have. And we do have advanced technological knowledge, and we keep growing across the board. And in the end, it's up to us. We are going to define what our future will look like. The future we're leaving to our children, grandchildren. Are we going to finally strike a balance with nature? Or are we going to keep on depleting natural resources? This is just some food for thought I would like to bring to all of us. In our industry, we have to think about our cities, our homes. We have to educate people. And I'm positive conscious leaders will be the driving force behind that transformation. That concludes my presentation. Thank you. I hope I have provided you with a positive message. I believe we should be aware that we can and should make a difference. And every drop counts. Thank you. I believe there may be questions. Please submit them to me or to the organizers. They'll be forwarding them to me. Thank you very much.
That was really interesting, Cristofer. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for sharing such important news with the market. We can see you have brought a lot of innovation to us, and we do hope everyone has enjoyed it. Now we have the second presentation of the second day of the CSCB Sustainability Forum. Our next speaker is Antonella Bertagnin, a coordinator of the Fashion Committee at Lineapelle Trend Selection since 1998. Lineapelle, as most of you know, is one of the biggest producers for global trade shows with leather and materials. We are going to hear a lot of accurate information about the next collections. Antonella is Italian and she will be speaking English. So please, if you don't understand English, click on the interpretation button at the bottom bar of Zoom to choose Portuguese. Welcome, Antonella. Thank you for being here, and you may begin.
Hello, thank you to you. Hello to everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to add a contribution to a vision of a slow living future with the fashion research offered by Lineapelle. I try to share my screen. Okay, and I'm going to tell you our research for winter 2022 and 23, 21 to 22, sorry. We all have a strong feeling. Change is in the air, and not in a negative sense. I believe it will be much more than a trend. It will be one of the cornerstones of the rebirth. It concerns materials and more. Materials are the primary components of the objects that accompany us in the everyday life. And the objects represents life's choices. New concepts are emerging on the horizon, not just economic, but made up of ideas in everyday life and also in the fashion world. New rhythms linked to the value rather than quantity, to the value of time, of the human, and of the rhythms of nature. We are now in a state of change, ready to embrace new ways of seeing what are both local and global. And citizens of the world we are discovering the roots of places that belong to all of us. This is very slow. Slow is the new hot, is our claim for winter 2021 and 22. This is our cover, like a blank page to a fresh start. Slow is an interesting and multifaceted word that has to do with time. There is a frenetic time that runs in a rush and a slow time that makes us feel and perceive what we are doing. Now, slow time will help us to grow and design new and alternative routes. Time is the luxury of the future. We have talked a lot about a global emergency that highlights our fragility as human beings. Nature seems to react powerfully to our desire to shape it at all costs. So perhaps is now a priority to rethink essential things, to put humanity and our rhythms back to the center of attention. Technology makes us feel all powerful, and nature makes us feel very fragile. It's time for a new human project. Low and slow. Pandemic has accelerated important processes that were already underway. In our research, we have been looking at two very topical subjects, low, like low definition, and slow, like slow life and slow fashion. Low definition is a term used negatively to define something of poor quality or as the side effect of an incorrect use of technology. However, it can be more than this. Low definition is also about communicating ever faster, leaving out the details like, for example, communicating with WhatsApp. It is also working with ever tighter deadlines that force you to use a lower resolution. So far, the trend has generally been to favor low definition, with the aim of producing products ever faster and at lower costs. But this model too is now the focus of much discussion. However, if we slow down, we can use our resources correctly. Information, research, and thinking. So we can produce high definition products that are high quality and durable. Slow means technological processes, but used to create refined and sophisticated colors and materials with responsible processes that take care of mankind and environment. Slow, therefore, corresponds to high. The vision for the future is based on thinking about a new type of high-definition capitalism, producing less but of higher quality, with a human dimension where slowness equals quality. We are ready for a fashion revolution. In the difficulties of this moment, I see an opportunity to refocus our objectives, a blank page to write on. Thinking about fashion, we could already feel the need for simplification in the air. We had introduced it in the previous season, and now fashion is discussing themes that focus precisely on this aspect, measured out in different rhythms to reconsider seasonality and bringing value back to the fore. This is an opportunity to rewrite the rules of the present and the future. Two words, blue and green. The 21st century begins today. The 21st century is taking form around two essential mantras, the environment and the technology. The two words to introduce the concept are inspired by an Italian philosopher who has synthesized the contemporary mood in two colors, green and blue. The green of nature, of course, and the blue of technology. Green and blue are the colors that represent this idea. They are colors that become concepts, fragments of contemporary society to be inhabited physically and culturally. Green is a green society, circular, based on sharing. Blue is innovation, a mature society of digital and open source information. All these activities promote a way of living together, focused on the quality of relationships and processes, rather than on consumption and on things. It is a state of mind. A new scenario lies before us, and two great roots have become intertwined. The symbiosis of these two new directions is becoming the inspiration for a different tomorrow. It is an essential tool to fixing the future. A new phygital normality where the potential of the physical self is augmented by digital. An augmented reality made of hands and minds at work. Let's talk about the laws of simplicity. Slow is simplicity. Now, an analysis of the time and variables. Starting from John Maeda's ideas. John Maeda's is an American designer, and his 10 rules for simplification. We have reinterpreted some of them as key ideas for the macro trends of the moment. It is difficult to talk about simplicity without slipping into banality. Then, drawing on John Maeda and his book, 10 Laws of Simplicity, we have selected some of the keywords that were cornerstones for this process of change. Simplify. Simplify is the starting point and the destination. Simplicity does not mean superficiality, quite opposite. Simplicity contains multitudes. Reduce. Use less to obtain more. A step toward a slow living. Seeking out a new circular harmony with the environment, recovering things that would otherwise be thrown away, and discovering that we can achieve more by using less. Learning from research, knowledge as a tool of simplification. Emotions. This has been a guiding idea in the previous season, and we have seen what an important factor living and communication without filter is in terms of choices we make. Next is context. What lies on the periphery of simplicity is definitely non-peripheral. We are talking about nostalgia. Failure is not a negative word in this case. Something can never be simple. This is the room for a free creativity. The one. Fashion is uniqueness. Simplicity is about subtracting the obvious and adding the meaningful. Oh, there is something wrong?
No, everything okay.
It's okay? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Then how we can turn this concept into fashion colors or materials. Let's focus on this point. We are entering in a new era where sustainability is impossible to separate from the responsibility of companies and individuals, of course, from the future. Recyclable, renewable, responsible. And the suffix "re" seems to be the most widely used syllable when we talk about new materials. Fashionistas are more aware of their clothes' environmental impact than ever before. And they are using the newfound awareness to remind brands and other consumers about the importance of protecting the planet. Fashion causes pollution, and recovering leftover waste materials is the most important task at the moment. Leather craftsmanship is born as one of the first upcycling activities put in place by human beings. And the leather industry is ecologist ante litteram, and circular economy is part of its DNA. It is also something of an obligation for the future, as well as being an easiest way to go right now. We are beginning to see the result of this commitment to making the supply chain sustainable and producing material and products with a lower environmental impact. Materials and processes that can be endlessly recycled without losing the quality of the final product. This seems to be the first big step to take as we wait for the solution that will move us to the next apocalypse, a very epochal revolution. Slow living means sustainability. It means new ideas about materials and a new generation of product. From reduce, research into issue of sustainability continues in the world of leather. There are many projects exploring interesting subjects such as the distillation of solvents, the reuse and the recirculation of tannic substances used in the various stages of the production cycle, and the reduction in the use of water. But leather also renews the tactile aspect. Basic, reinterpreted with an eye of sustainability, creates its own unique feel, different and new. This feel is based on technological research, of course, and of the idea of pleasure. Research into metal-free tanning addresses new demands and the need for biodegradable and compostable materials. Waste management is very important. Materials combining industrial processes and sustainability. The research being undertaken in textile and small parts is following a similar approach. The focus is on renewable resources and the reduction of CO2 emissions during the various stages of production. We are talking about carbon neutral. In particular, textiles are focusing on recyclable and biodegradable fibers. The new footwear will have materials in line with the concept.
Okay, I'll leave it where it is.
Oh. Please, okay. Responsible projects that will choose new technical solution of assemblies to avoid the use of unsustainable glues with easily detachable parts for a proper use of recycling. Then recyclable, renewable, responsible. These are projects that have already started. Sustainability also represents a business opportunity. Consumers declare that they are willing to pay more for green content, which is why materials must remain at the center of attention. New renaissance means being aware, spotting new things, giving opportunity to new ideas, and knowing how to recognize the new. Emotion. When we talk about emotion, more is better than less, of course. Technology is also essential in bringing the human back to the center of that which machines cannot experience: emotions, the sense of pleasure and well-being. It is fundamental that these are transferred into materials and products. The world we live in is afraid of touch interaction, especially now. Then somebody decided to highlight it, turning human skin into a musical instrument, very emotional. Renormal, a new normal. The crisis is an opportunity for mutation. Let's start from the things we know, from certainties. Digital is now part of our life, and reality risks losing its anchor. Here, therefore, is the importance of getting closer to the real thing, to the truth. Value and quality acquire a new importance. This doesn't mean that it doesn't matter how much you say, but is important what you say. The new generations are very sensitive to this. The fashion we knew is dead, and the habits of the past have been revolutionized. Life at home has changed the relationship with our way of dressing. During the lockdown, the house changed its way of existing. It became a primary place to be treated like the body itself. The proof is the success of hybrid shoes, footwear to use inside and outside home. Fashion needs new models and formulas. There has been a change of lifestyle with more fluidity between generations and with a change of priority. Now let's focus on materials. Lounge dressing, a cocoon mood, soft and fluffy to wrap ourselves up in a welcoming and emotional sense of well-being. We have learned how to live in our homes, and we want to maintain the same pleasure outside too. Then, importance to tactile quality and ultra-light weights. Wellness. Soft and enveloping materials with invisible performance. Soft and puffy effect extend the pleasure of a relaxing break. So we can enjoy it even during everyday work. Emotional materials that give pleasure to the body interact with fashion. Emotional enhanced tactility, softness and tactile aspects will be more important. We can no longer live without them. Technology is in our life. We live into a multi-universe, physical and digital, or phygital is the new word. This thanks to technology and knowledge. Knowledge makes everything simpler. Technological research is fundamental to this, for the design, for optimization and experimentation of new methods and new way of working, analyzing, experimenting and designing. All the new technological initiatives that have helped us face the current difficulties are also part of this, from virtual meetings, for example, to virtual fashion show and virtual fairs. Now we live digital. Feel materials like a second skin. Leather processing technology finds solution in innovation. The technology for making stretch leather is constantly improving. Thicknesses for clothing will be very, very interesting. Fluidity means that clothing materials are also used for footwear and leather goods. Analogical digital or analogical. Digital printing simplifies our life. Digital overlapping, small, interesting digital designs playing with logos. Using plotters simplifies all kinds of decorations. Nocturnal shades and color gradients are now part of the digital aesthetic. And as is all the world of shimmer and spatial effect derived from the most recent experimentation. Solarized, the influence of the computer on aesthetic is nothing new. Just apply a filter on and the concept of neon turns into solarized. Solarizing to break up patterns and make them digital and bright. Context. This is a very interesting point. What lies on periphery of simplicity is definitely non-peripheral. When we address the world of young people, we often forget ourselves and our feeling of wonder towards things and items from the not too distant past. Past, present, and future do not exist independently. They always coexist in the present moment. Young creatives are rediscovering the analog dimension. The thought this had ended with the adventure of multimedia. But for Generation Z, this has become a very interesting discovery. It's been called anemoia. Anemoia is a feeling of nostalgia for something that has never been experienced. For example, many pop stars, including Billie Eilish, are releasing their music on audio cassettes, and something that comes from the past and that we would never have imagined to seeing again. Then nostalgia is slow. Vintage and natural are the keywords for a mood that combines analog and digital with research into archives. Nostalgia applied on materials means natural aspects, perfection and imperfection, padding a new melange to shade monochromes and give them depth. Nothing is perfect. It is the perception of luxurious-looking materials for both basic chic and more sporty look. The naturalness of processes and materials is enhanced and made precious. by small natural wrinkles, small shadows from dyeing. Texture and grains are respected and enhanced by proportions. We talk a lot about home, so tapestry. Tapestries and interiors mingle with fashion, not only in terms of designs, but also in the choice of materials and thicknesses to be reinterpreted. Heritage to reinvent and reinterpreted embroidery, patterns, tapestry. The one, welcome in a fluid world. The catwalks are highlighting this unification of freedom of style, which with masculine and feminine becoming increasingly fluid. This is no longer shocking and is beginning to be seen as normal, not only in fashion, but also in terms of social change. Masculine and feminine are reconsidering clothing archetypes. Monochrome unifies any discontinuity. When we are faced with the fact that not everything can be simplified, color can often help. Working with monochrome means rearranging and harmonizing the differences, underlining the essential and focusing attention on the important point. Focus on processes, on quality, on details, on methods, on processing techniques and technologies. Now let's focus on renewing classic with a rebellion in proportion, like micro and macro. Like a tightrope walker, we are seeking to discover the face of modernity by finding the dimension of innovation that brings opposite together. The past and the future combined in research, workmanship, and style. Bringing opposites together also means that sportswear and tailoring can coexist, or exploring processes with contrasting glossy and matte finishing. Fashion and duration. Luxury brands are including long-lasting products in their collections. We talked before about the importance of value and quality. For materials, this means more attention to quality and details and to sustainability and durability. For example, there is an increase in demand for alternative tanning and water-based dyes. Anti-excess, simplifying aesthetic. For example, with clean embossing, well-defined grooves to draw basic animal or geometric designs, or both leather and textiles. Failure, in this case, is not a negative word. Something can never be simple. It is the young creative word. It's not always possible to simplify everything. The complexity of the contemporary world does not help, of course, and clearly has a significant influence on creativity in general. Technology that facilitates the diffusion of creative ideas also offers us a wonderful variable, the unpredictable, giving free rein to creative energy, especially for graphics. The last chapter looks at the unpredictable. Here we will examine patterns and processes that throw caution to the wind. Creativity is like something unexpected that scrambles the rules. So plenty of space for experimentation. Doodles and scribing, liberating and stress relieving, to decorate, to embroider, to underline, to make opaque the surfaces of materials. Rebelling with monochrome and dusty patterns with a charcoal effect, super vintage. Renew the heritage embroidery. Color blocking, simplifying by technology aesthetic. Synthesis also between polychrome and color blocks, to be developed and mixed with graphics and different materials, creating a patchwork effect for cheerful and super fashion upcycling. Let's talk about colors. We have a new vision for colors, a monochrome mood. Monochrome for us means synthesis. Over the last few seasons, we have seen that it's increasingly difficult to define a clearly recognizable line of colors, even based on products that have been sold. So we have set the stopwatch back to 0, defining more conceptual color dimension to work within. A choice of 5 tones to explore, with the addition of an accent like small, low resolution touches. All transitional colors are widely used in summer and winter. White, black, brown, blue, red, sorry, and blue. New slow word for the future is solidarity. What we have shown you today was developed during lockdown and then working remotely, each from our own homes. I introduced you the stay-home crew. It has been a very interesting and engaging experience. The companies that support us in our fashion committee have turned their hand to a pret-a-porter photography, opening their photographic archives and or taking pictures of their products with their phones. You have seen the results by yourself. This has been a collective process which meant working together as a team, and we all have learned to be more flexible and resilient. Today, I have shown you our stylistic research for Fall-Winter 2021-22 with what we know best, our own faces, as simple as that. New, slow word for the future is solidarity. It is also the new formula for the next fashion fairs. For the second time in March, we'll unite to face the new season, Spring-Summer 22. Lineapelle will be held in Milan on 23rd and 24th of March, and I hope we will be able to meet you on that occasion. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share our research with you, and I wish you the best for the future. See you in Milan very soon. A te logo. It's okay?
Obrigado, Antonella.
Thank you very much, Antonella.
Thank you.
We are deep in the fashion world, and we want to understand where consumption is headed and where behavior is headed. So thank you for being here with us and for having shared your research and your experience with our attendees. Now, this is the second day of the CSCB Sustainability Forum 2020. This is an online live edition. This project is brought to you by the Brazilian Leather Project, the CICB, and Apex-Brasil to boost domestic leather abroad. Our gold sponsors are JBS, Coros, and Smit Zoon. Our silver sponsors are Euro America and Units Brazil. So this is the third and last talk of today's event. So now we have Mr. David Peters, an international advisor who has specialized in leather. He has over 40 years of experience as a leather industry expert. He will be speaking English, so please choose the interpretation button if you need translation into Portuguese. His firm, which works in forecasts, markets, and information, is very appreciated all over the world, and we are very happy to have him here to talk about global forecasts for the leather industry. David, thank you, and you may begin.
Good morning. Thank you, Rogerio, for inviting me to participate in this event. An additional thanks to the CICB. There are many words used to describe what has happened this year, and very few have been positive. The coronavirus has disrupted the entire planet and has forced all of us to re-examine how we live, function, and connect with each other. In January, I drew attention to two of the biggest issues I believe faced our industry: food safety and climate change. The impact of both in 2020 have been game changers. Understanding the impact and influences of changes brought by COVID-19 are only the first step in formulating a strategy for the years ahead. Conventions from a political, economical, and social perspective have been disrupted. We're not going back to a lifestyle pre-2020. Therefore, we need to adapt to what the new world will become in 2021. As we look ahead, we realize that in the past, it's been a challenging year. Just to review, we had a growing crisis from December 31 in the Wuhan cluster to by January the 30th, the World Health Organization classified a public health emergency. The COVID effect was basically affected 218 countries, more than 68 million cases so far and 1.6 deaths. 50% of the world's 3.3 billion people, global workforce, are at risk of losing their livelihoods, which means no income for food or less good food, and their ability to purchase at retail becomes more difficult. We've had a disruption in borders and trade restrictions and confinement measures. We're witnessing several major changes, a monumental shift in the social structures. Each of these changes will have a profound effect on how we function and operate our business. Population. Previously, there was a big trend of moving from the suburbs or the countryside to the cities. This is now completely reversed, where due to the coronavirus, more people are moving back into the suburbs. The suburban housing market, as I will demonstrate later on, has regained and has become explosive in terms of people looking for more and more single-family homes, which is affecting our industry. The workplace has changed dramatically, as many people have moved their offices to homes and also have discovered some space constraints in functioning together with their family and operating their businesses. This has encouraged more people to look for bigger homes. Education of our children has also changed, where schools are now online, and we're even having a hybrid version where we do online and in-person learning. Technology has had to speed up to respond to these demands. There is more Zoom calls as we're having today, and we're becoming more cell phone dependent, if that's possible. And mobility, the effects on transportation, especially the public transportation, has been huge, and industry is adjusting. From the beginning of time, humans want to connect and be close to each other. COVID is radically changing this dynamic, as restaurants, shops, schools, and manufacturing have to change to accommodate social distancing. There's also a lifestyle change with no commute, the shift from the city, and the attitude of the individual is becoming more casual and relaxed. And it's also having a more environmental impact as people focus on the quality of life, climate change, and productivity. However, it is in the casual and relaxed that is affecting our business, specifically the leather business, in a radical way. And I'll address that shortly. The next normal, according to McKinsey & Company, are 6 categories that best describe the pathway. The economic, social, and political landscapes are adapting to these behavioral changes. The mutation in demand is a redefinition of discretionary spending and the type of purchases consumers want to make. For example, they're buying an iPhone 12 versus a pair of leather shoes. There's a transformed workforce, working place clothing, or the change in traditional concepts. Formal versus casual. Modifications in resiliency, accepting the new structure is patience timelines, reaction to restrictions. Regulatory uncertainty, political pandering, and or intrusion to control. And then we have the evolution of the virus. This chart by McKinsey does an excellent job at explaining these changes. We have a digital adoption. There's a shift from business to business to consumer. Online shopping is exploding. People are becoming less loyal to specific brands and switching, discovering new opportunities, and the patterns in consumption are changing. There is a paradigm shift taking place. As I mentioned, an acceleration of digital retailing. People view their doctors online. People educate online. People are not writing checks or cash, doing virtual payments. They're even buying grocery and ordering and having deliveries, or even driving to get curbside pickup. Loyalty is becoming expressed only to vendors who can become mini fulfillment centers and pickup points. The retail environment is changing, and product manufacturers are focusing on efficiencies and optimization, are redesigning their production environments more closely tied to which materials and construction techniques are more profitable. And some of them, and often, are excluding leather. Consumers are looking for a retail experience where they feel safe and protected, and the cultural traditions of touch, feel, and smell when making buying decisions are changing. Leather has always had a haptic or touch feel relationship, and in the online retail world, that is difficult to achieve. We've also had, as I'm sure many people have seen, the US election, and we have a new president, which will bring about many changes. We will have a more disciplined approach to COVID. There will be an increase in labor costs. New trade deals would be mutually beneficial and more strategic compared to being tactical under the previous administration. There will be an emphasis on local sourcing, a return to global alliances, an end to forced or fake trade wars. There'll be increased taxes in the domestic market. There'll be a focus on climate change and environment, and there will be more pressure put on manufacturing concerns to take responsibility for their operations, and an environmental focus. So where does this leave leather in a sustainability model? I've identified three main aspects. One is the process, which covers water, chemicals, and waste. The second is the material availability, covering cattle supply, meat demand, and human resources. And the third is economic, raw material pricing, cost to convert, and brand value. In each of these, there's one key element. In the case of process, we need to get better at what I describe as dosing. If we look at our formulations, we have to put in more chemicals to it to take the pickup in the drums for each hide. But this creates issues in terms of discharge. We need to have initiatives from chemical and engineering companies to find solutions that allow the chemicals to adhere more quickly, the take up in the hides more efficiently, and not have so much waste. This is something that's long overdue. It's not about selling more chemicals, it's about selling chemicals and formulations that work more efficiently, and we therefore minimize discharge. We have as we'll demonstrate in some charts later on, we have a raw material reduction. Hides will get bigger, and in the long term, fewer. We also have challenges in finding people to work in these hide-related industries. We need to optimize our raw material, find the best use for each selection. We have to get better at predictive performance, have better data-driven decisions. We need to digitalize the leather industry. So let's look a little bit at supply. As I expressed previously, when I gave this presentation in January, I showed that roughly around the world, there's 1.4 billion head of cattle, and India being the largest. This hasn't changed particularly. The top 20 countries account for 75% of the world's bovine cattle supply, but there's reason to believe that we will see a global reduction in the numbers over the next few years. If you look at this chart, since 1995, we've seen a reduction in cattle inventories on a global basis. And there's a fight going on between who owns the land and who will occupy it. As the population in the world expands, it contracts for the cattle because humans want to live more in the countryside or in the suburbs. Global hide production is basically the same. I have adjusted the Chinese number. The official number is closer to 48.5 million, which is unsustainable. If you have an inventory, an official inventory of 94.4, and you are slaughtering 48.5, you'll run out of cattle in merely 2-3 years. So this number cannot be correct. That's why I've adjusted it to 25 million. In the case of the number in India, these are predominantly water buffalo. Hide production as a trend has been increasing, but long term, this is a negative as it reflects a liquidation of cattle numbers. In the United States, in spite of COVID-19, has been a record year for meat profitability, where meat packers have earned record amounts for their operations. Meat yields continue to grow as packers improve their optimization. We're expecting that in 2020, we'll have approximately a 3% reduction in slaughter, but that should improve in 2021. But the improvement in yields is seen by the amount of pounds, 27.1 billion pounds, versus, and in 2021, £27.4 billion. This to me is a very important chart. And you can see here from 2008 that the live weight of the cattle is increasing. What this means is bigger hides. And this trend is true in all beef markets, in all of the major beef producing countries. Bigger hides, smaller herds, and therefore total numbers of hides ultimately will reduce. In the EU, with the closure of schools, restaurants, companies have severely impacted the food service sector. In April, May, there was a reduction of 10%. Things that you would expect. Inventories are roughly the same, but overall, we will see a decline in production in all the European countries next year by roughly 2%. There will be a focus in the European Common Market entitled Fork to Farm, where there reduced use of pesticides, fertilizer, and other things in terms of the environment, which will put pressure on our industry to ensure that the carbon footprint becomes even more important, and life cycle analysis will play a greater role in 2021. China is relaxing their rules on cattle farming. The African swine fever issue turned around in 2020. Even though it produced record lows, the hog production is up by 9% and sales 15%. And we believe that we've seen the worst behind us. And in 2021, the inventory will be back at 370 million head, which, as indicated, is 80% of pre-African swine fever levels. But what's more important is the focus on the beef industry, and China is growing this aspect of the industry. Australia, the beef industry is going through a transformation period. The estimated slaughter next year will be the lowest in 36 years due to the drought conditions and the fires. There's been poor economic conditions, high cattle costs, labor shortages, and negative margins. In Argentina, production is forecast at around 13 million hides. As I showed in the United States, the same is true in Argentina. The cattle weights are increasing, but domestic consumption of meat is dropping to 112 pounds per capita. It's the lowest since 2011. As an example, as a comparison, in 2016, it was 120 pounds. Mexico is an important market for the auto leather production, and that's why I put this slide in. The industry growth will reduce cattle exports. And Mexico is a large provider of cattle for the United States, supplying about 1.3 million head per year. This will change over the next few years as the Mexican meat packers are growing and becoming more sophisticated. So let's move to demand. I'm going to focus on three sectors: automotive, footwear, and residential upholstery. In 2019, we saw the distribution of hides, and these numbers here, footwear, auto, upholstery, are the amount of hides, millions of hides used, and we developed a surplus of 37 million hides. This is an updated chart from I presented in January. There were some numbers that needed adjusting, and footwear represented 43%, automotive 17%. The surplus was 12%. As we look into 2020, footwear went down, the surplus went up by a small amount. Footwear went to 39%, auto 15%, furniture 17%, leather goods and surplus is 13%. The auto went down due to COVID. There was many closures in all the major markets. Upholstery increased due to the shift in consumers to the suburbs, and I'll explain that in a later slide. But footwear lost due to reduction in dress and casual. Work boot remained unchanged, but there was a growth in athletic use footwear. The market segment share over the last 6 years, you can see furniture and surplus is the two areas of growth. The global tanning distribution is difficult to accurately predict, only because of the large movement of wet blues and crust to many from and to many countries. This is based on finished leather production, and directionally, I believe it's very correct. 97% of the leather business, leather manufacturing, finished leather business, is concentrated in 15 countries. So let's move to the automotive business. As we can see here, the world motor vehicle production, light vehicle production, declined in 2019. So we already entered this year with a reduction of 5.6%. The largest market, China, was down 7.6. EU and North America were down 4.3 and 3.5. So you can see here in 2018, there were 98 million light vehicles produced, and in 2019, 92.7. For the future, we expect 2020 to continue this downtrend by up to 20%, meaning we'll lose 1.8 million vehicles. As sales for the first half were down 24.6%. However, China is optimistic, it's improving. Europe and North America have remained stable during July and August. South America is continuing to decline. Korea was very encouraging. They had a growth of 8% in the first half of 2020, mostly by Hyundai and Kia. But 2021 looks even more encouraging. The three main markets, as I indicated, China, Europe, and USA, is positive growth from April, and we expect in 2021 7.4% increase, and in 2022 4.7%. So the automotive business from going forward looks good. It looks good in China. I believe it will return and look better in the EU, and the United States is also doing well. In fact, yesterday, the Wall Street Journal published that the Chinese passenger sales grew 8% to 2.1 million in November, comparing to a year ago. In the United States, there's been many changes for the automotive. There's been changes at retail level, lower inventories, our cars on dealer lots are fewer. We expect demand for more features and loaded cars, meaning more leather. Strong demand, online sales are growing, especially in the used car market. So from a business point of view, this is a seller's market. And as a result, the dealers have had a very good year profitability-wise. 2021, we expect the market to adjust slightly as dealers and showrooms get used to lower stocks. Customers have fewer options, and as the dealers and manufacturers make more money with more options, we believe the cars will have a lot more leather content and more electronics, as their margins are better that way. Brand loyalty is changing because the inventory is being low, consumers come in, don't find the car they want, so they switch to another brand. But there will be pressure on shorter lead times. Just in time becomes really just in time. And there'll be pressure on the supply chain to perform. As we look at automotive seating, we're looking here at a slight change. It used to be criterion defects. And while this is still true, the trend is becoming more complex as the integration of various materials, synthetic and leather, are are presenting challenges for the manufacturers of leather. Design is becoming more complicated in terms of perfing, quilting, and embossing, and the environment in terms of creating leathers that respond well to heating and cooling, and the performance of those leathers, and suitability, stitching, and egress, and entering and exiting. So these aspects all put pressure on the type of construction being used for leather. In this case of the cushion, where the lamination takes place, multiple types of foams are causing some challenges in leather construction. The big challenge today, and has been for a while, is blue dye transfer, heat resistance, and color matching. As I mentioned, multiple foam types, lamination has become an issue. And obviously odor is always a big problem, especially when focusing on the Chinese market. While blue dye and odor are the hot topics, this central issue, multiple foam types lamination, have become even more challenging. As from a field issue, baggy or loose leathers, primarily due to separation at lamination, is encouraging tighter, smoother leathers, vacuum dried or air dried processes. Automotive tanning centers, this hasn't changed very much, with Mexico being the largest. This is finishing and cutting. Here's the projection for 2025. We see a slight downturn in 2020 for the reasons just mentioned. It's good news, as we see in the outer years, there's going to be a more rapid use of leather as options, and the continued domination of SUVs in the marketplace. Leather is in fashion and in demand. As we look at footwear, global shoe market is about 25 billion pairs. There was some adjustments in 2020. However, this is not good for our industry, as consumers staying more at home prefer to use bare feet or socks or slippers. Shoe sustainability, the focus is more on recycled materials. This was a chart from the Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America of what's being really tracked. So leather has a good story. However, it's a branding issue and public perception. There are changing perceptions. I've identified 5. These are mostly industry initiatives, defensive measures to counter various shoe brands who need to correct the misconceptions of leather. But here is the biggest challenge we have in our industry, the athleisure business. 70 billion is the global athletic footwear. In terms of pairs of shoes, you can see in 2019 and 2020, it's approaching 5 million, or 25% of the current shoe volume. And if we look at the top 9 major footwear companies, and the 4 main shoe categories, dress, casual, work boot, athleisure is the #1 focus. And if you look of the 9 companies, top footwear companies, 6 of them focus on athleisure. Projection for 2025, we can see here that footwear will come back in the outer years as the COVID lockdowns and resolutions to coronavirus are found and normalcy returns. And at that point, people will start to move back to leather, more higher content of leather footwear. As we look at residential furniture, low mortgage rates, cost of housing, financing housing has created the hardest pandemic purchase. As people move out of the cities, they want more space. So the housing market in the United States has grown tremendously. 16 home sales is reached a 14-year high. Home prices have also gone up, and the inventory is very low. Total inventory hit a record low of 2.7 months supply in September and sunk even lower in October. The consequences in real estate as the population is shifting from the city to the suburbs, the working from home, the market is strong, but the effects are the sale of couches, sofas, and home furnishings, and vehicle purchases. Very quickly, the global market for retail furniture is 400 billion, hide usage of around 50 million hides, and more than 17 million splits. Number one country being USA, India, and China. Projection for 2025, you can see that 2020 and 2021 are very strong. And the outer years, it should adjust slightly. The reason for this change is the shift from urban or city life to suburban. Retail, very quickly, declining consumer spending, and we expect this will improve next year, but everything is moving more towards the internet, online sales. But you can see in April, clothing retails decreased substantially, whereas grocery stores increased. So we had a decrease in spending on clothing and shoes and an increase in groceries, which was to be expected. There's a change in discretionary income affecting 33%, and online rapidly expanding, the Amazon effect. Realignment of values and priorities, few and larger shopping trips, and a reduction in entertainment. Big shift in dress requirements, and this is supporting the dependence on athletic loungewear and casual clothing, which supports the numbers for athleisure. You can see here the movement in retail from 2017 to 2023. It's in excess of 20% of all retail business is now online, and it is growing. So the pricing, you can see here two charts. On the left is heavy Texas steers, which is regarded as a premium type selection, and on the right, brandy cows, which is a economical selection. And you can see how both markets completely declined from 14. What this chart shows is the value difference between the two selections. And this is true for all selections around the world, that in 2014, the difference in the values was 33%, and by 2020, September, October, there was a 95% difference in the value, meaning that the spread between the good hides and the economical selections had widened considerably, and the economical hides took the biggest drop in price. This is causing a market structure to change. The spread is widening, conversion costs are challenged, as I'll indicate shortly, and a shifting of the processes. US hide leather trends are changing. Wet blue production has declined by nearly 40%. From 100, is now around 120,000 per week compared to 206 in 2014. And there's a further erosion of tanning due to the increased disparity between hide values. So this chart shows you wet blue production versus wet blue cost, and the reason why the wet blue production has declined. If you look at the percentage, the red line shows that wet blue costs represent 70% of the value of the hide, whereas back in 2014, due to the high cost of hides, it only represented around 10 to 12%. As a result, it is cheaper to shift that processing to other countries, and that's why I believe we're losing some of the wet blue business in the United States. This chart is very interesting. That shows, this is the price chart for heavy native steers. This is the price chart for OPEC oil. You can see it correlates very nicely. And Exxon forecasts that for the next 7 years, we will see a decline in oil prices. And obviously, this is the feedstock for all synthetics. So as long as oil prices remain low, feedstocks for synthetics will remain low, and synthetics become an economical option instead of leather. The last time prices reached this level that we're at today was 1976. The average price for native steers was 26.64 in 2020. So 44 years ago, if we remember that far back, was when Star Wars came out. Apple was founded by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. We had the American 200-year birthday. The Olympics were in Montreal, and Jimmy Carter became president. 5 major events. We'll see what happens in 44 years from now. Global hide absorption for 2020. You can see here in the beginning of the year, due to COVID, a lot of hides became unused and went to surplus. But as the year progressed, the absorption rate, meaning the percentage of hides being utilized for leather, has increased dramatically. And by December, we're at 90%. So the surplus amount of hides is changing as prices became very cheap. So finally, this is the pricing forecast for 2025. And essentially what I'm predicting is prices should resume their upward trend and plateau. I don't think they're ever going to return, ever is a long time, but I don't think they're going to return to the highs that we saw in 2014, which I believe was very negative, but they're going to stay around plus or minus 20 or 30% from today's lows. So between the $20 and $40 range. I leave you with this last slide. One of the most famous politicians in the world was Winston Churchill, and he said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." This has presented us with a lot of opportunities, the COVID. We've had to force changes in how we operate and function and run our businesses and our lives, and we should learn from this and never let these lessons go to waste.
Obrigado.
Thank you very much.
David.
Thank you very much, David. I am sure that 2020 was a very challenging year, as we all know. But we can already envision a more positive future for the next years. Thank you very much for being here today, David. We are sure that the knowledge you have shared will help this industry in its future strategies. Now we are getting to the end of the CSCB Sustainability Forum. Our gold sponsors were JBS Coros and Smit Zoon. Our silver sponsors were Euro-America and Apex-Brasil. Today, after the forum, we will have a draw of 2 leather backpacks for people who have donated to one of the social initiatives we are supporting. We are going to use technology for the draw. If you are one of the winners, our team will be in touch with you and we will publish your name on our Facebook page from CICB. Thank you very much for being here with us today and yesterday. We've shared a lot of value and a lot of knowledge on these 2 days, connecting people, brands, experiences, and inspiration. We now have 2 videos to wrap up our event. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next CSCB Sustainability Forum.
Eu sou Relações Públicas e assistente social de formação. Estou na ONG Orienta a Vida há 8 anos, fazendo essa troca de experiências. A ONG Orienta a Vida trabalha de 2 formas com as assistidas. A gente tem mulheres fixas que vêm até o projeto e trabalham conosco diariamente, e a gente tem artesãs. Elas recebem a capacitação, o acompanhamento, e elas podem pegar o trabalho conosco, realizar nas residências ou realizar aqui na sede da organização. Por que isso? Primeiro que foi a logística que a gente achou para conseguir atender o maior número possível de mulheres no início. é o que a realidade socioeconômica nos traz, porque algumas mulheres não podem sair de casa pelos filhos. Então, para cada caso, a gente trabalha pessoalmente, trabalha com carinho e independente de estarem internas, de serem externas, a gente faz o trabalho socioassistencial.
O que eu posso dizer da ONG Orienta a Vida? Para mim foi o início, um pontapé, digamos, inicial, porque eu vim para essa região sem nada.
E a importância da ONG Orienta a Vida para mim foi que aprendi cursos, eu consegui comprar minha casa, né? E eu mantenho, né, minhas filhas também, que são 3 meninos, porque não é fácil só hoje em dia. Eu acho que não é só o homem da casa para poder manter a casa. Hoje em dia eu creio que seja os dois.
A Orienta a Vida, ela mudou minha vida, porque eu sempre fui dessa área de costura, mas nunca tive a oportunidade. E na ONG eu tive a oportunidade de mostrar o meu serviço, de aprender. Então foi muito bom. A gente está muito feliz com a parceria com a Leather Labs, que nos abriu os horizontes e nos trouxe essa ideia de mostrar da onde vêm os nossos produtos, as vidas que são transformadas com os produtos. E a gente trabalha agora efetivamente a questão da rastreabilidade, que mostra desde a matéria-prima do produto que está sendo trabalhado, todo o manuseio feito pelas mulheres que têm as vidas transformadas pela geração de renda e de trabalho que esse produto está proporcionando, até chegar no cliente final. E tudo isso, no processo de rastreabilidade, ele chega até a casa do nosso cliente. Então ele vai poder acompanhar um pouquinho do nosso dia a dia, um pouco da nossa história, da história de vida de cada uma das mulheres que são beneficiadas nesse processo.
Leather is one of man's earliest and most useful inventions. For thousands of years, leather has helped humans survive some of nature's harshest conditions. Over the centuries, the production of leather has evolved significantly. It's always been made from a byproduct which is sustainable in itself. Today, with consumers increasingly demanding chrome-free leather, it's time to revolutionize leather tanning. We are setting a new standard in sustainable leather, and we call it Zeology. Let me take you through the science and chemistry behind the Zeology tanning concept. It is the only chrome-free tanning alternative that is more sustainable and offers better leather performance. Tanning with Zeology all starts out with zeolite, a combination of alumina, silicon sand and oxygen, elements which are all abundantly present in the Earth's crust. As zeolite is formed, the 3 materials form a network structure. We then modify the zeolite into a functionalized and aggregated structure to make it suitable as a tanning agent. Before starting the actual tanning, the hide needs to be prepared. Hair, fats, and proteins are removed, and the fibers are opened up to optimize the uptake of the Zeology tanning agent into the collagen. The actual tanning takes place inside a drum with a water float that's been modified for tanning. When the collagen is properly prepared, we add Zeology into the mix. The aggregated zeolite structures are dispersed into smaller particles. The patented treatment of the zeolite in Zeology ensures that the level of dispersion is optimal to prepare it for the next step in tanning. The optimally dispersed Zeology tanning agent penetrates into the hides, reaching even the smallest collagen fibrils. Thanks to the modification of Zeology, it distributes evenly throughout the collagen. To start the actual tanning, Zeology has to be activated by adding activation agents to the water float, as this increases the pH level. The dispersed zeology particles become more active towards the collagen, and they start to form a network. Zeology then covers the collagen fibers with a fixed and stable zeolite network. This is the point where zeology tanning is complete. What started out as a hide is now transformed into tan leather, which we call Zeo White, containing mainly collagen and zeolite. Both components are not harmful to the environment. The intermediate Zeo White is now ready to be processed to become a leather that can be used for anything from a handbag to a car seat. Now you see why zeology is truly revolutionizing the age-old tanning process. With this sustainable tanning concept, we are no longer dwelling on the past, but taking leather into the future.